A very good evening, Zimbabwe. This is Studio 7 Live Talk coming to you live from the Voice of America in Washington. This Thursday, January 22nd, 2015. This is the Women's Roundtable, Ngati Kurukurei Madzimai. Ngati Kurukurei Madzimai comes to you every Thursday, and this is where we discuss issues affecting women. I'm Marvelous Mhlanganyahuye in Washington.
I'm Praxedis Jeremiah.
And today we are looking at the high rate of domestic violence targeting women and young girls as the country's economy continues to spiral downwards. What are your views on the issue?
To join our discussion, you can phone us directly on 001-202-619-2077. The number again, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back.
And as you know, Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on the 909 medium wave frequency and on the 4930 and 15455 kilohertz shortwave, Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m. But for all our women out there, Thursday is your day.
And you can also find us on the internet, on the web, on www.voazimbabwe.com, lobagu www.voashona.com, lobanjalo ku www.voaindebele.com.
Kana mukadzi asina zvake zvaanogona kumira nazvo zvinobva zvanetsa nokuti mumba macho munenge muchiti mapedza kupopotedzana. Handiti munhu umwe chete wanga uchipopotedzana naye ndiye waoda kukumbira mari yekuti atenge dovire vana vacho vachienda kuchikoro, ndiye waoda kuti akupe mari yekuti mutenge uniform, ndiye waoda kuti akupe mari yekuti vana vadye. Saka kuti uzoti mapedza kupopotedzana nekurovana womuti ndodo mari, of course haatokupi. Saka asi kana mukadzi achishandira ega nemaoko ake aine mari yake tinozopopotedzana ndakaguta tinozotaura nekupopotedzanaka, asi vana vangu vaenda kuchikoro. Handichamirire munhu wandapopotedzana naye kuti ndipowo mari yechikoro because mari yacho ndinenge ndinayo. Saka indongofunga kuti pane dambudziko ndipapo kuti kana mukadzi asina chake chaari kuzviitira. Vasaitiwa tinyanyotaura nevakadzi vechidiki vakawanda, kune vamwe vana vakawanda kuti anokuti akangopedza form 4 akutomhanya kunoroorwa, asi anokwanisa kuendera mberi nechikoro, anokwanisa kuti atanga aita kakosi kake akwanise kumira ega achizviriritira. Vana vari kungomhanya vonoroorwa. Then kana mamba muya manjozvinoti aiwa nyaya yanga isizvo zvanandichifunga, nokuti kana munhu wamomba haisi nyaya kungoti mune muchiravaka, haisi nyaya kungorara all the time kuchada kudyiwa. But kana iwe usina zvako zvawakabata, usina zvako zvaunogona kuzviitira, haindofunga kuti tinobva raita dambudziko. So my encouragement is madzimaika, let's add value on ourselves. Ngatiwe vanhu vanoshanda vanogona kumira vachizviitira sezvinotaura shoko raMwari kuna Proverbs. Remukadzi wewo kuna Proverbs aindanzi ndiye anopedzisira mwenje wake kudzima usiku, anopedzisira kurara pane vamwe vese. Mangwana acho makuseni ndiye anotanga futi kumuka, hanzi amuka orongera vashandi vake mabasa, iye obata omhanya achinotsvaga kuti minda iripuko nditenge.
We have a multiplicity of problems. I think as a country we have been going a lot of economic problems. So one of the things that we've seen is that there are depressed incomes within the homes and people are fighting for the very few resources that are available. So there is a lot of tension if you look at even the numbers of women that have to approach the maintenance court to get some assistance. Clearly, I think our value system as a country also is really questionable, especially if you regard the number of incest cases that we are getting, the number of rape cases against children, which is mainly happening within the home. So there are multi-layered problems that we are facing, and this is causing a lot of the uptake in gender-based violence cases. This is not an issue for organizations. This is an issue for everyone, because every home has women, every home has girls, and I think communities and society in general really need to take responsibility for the safety and security of their own. And we really need more men to speak out against these issues, in particular men that are in positions of power, to really condemn issues of violence against women, because a lot of times when we talk about it, people want to minimize it and they think it's a women's issue. This is not a women's issue. This is not a domestic issue. Actually, it is a national crisis.
Vela mapulisa are advanced. Vala magraphs ayitshengisela ama-reports lawa per month. Our 2014 wonke sabona ukuthi hayi kutshengisa ukuthi izinto lezi udubo leli on the rise in most of the areas. Njalo njengesicelo sokuthi sifundisane obaba labo mama sonke ukuze usifundisana ukuthi i-gender based violence kayilunganga. Zikhona ezinye indlela ezingathathwa ukuze abantu balungise ama problems asemizini lezindlini.
Kutshengisa ukuthi kukhona okunye elizweni okungahambi kuhle ngoba abantu singathi kumbe bayazi expressa kumbe ngeviolence ngoba nxa kungela kuhle endlini ubaba lo mama kulula ukuthi bagcine sebesilwa ngoba akukho kokubamba abantwana imali ye-school fees kayikho, imali zamabonus kazibuyanga. So udlakela ngathi lucina lukhulisa ukuthi abantu nje ezindlini ngathi impilo gayile direction ngakukhanya.
Today on the Women's Roundtable, we are discussing the high rate of domestic violence cases in the country and ways to help alleviate this problem. Musasa Project, a non-governmental organization which looks at women's rights, says domestic violence has reached crisis levels, adding the continuing collapse of the economy could be a major contributor to the problem.
And the Musasa Project as well recorded over 15,000 of gender-based violence cases countrywide as compared to 10,000 the previous year. The director of Musasa Project, Mrs. Neti Musanu, told Studio 7 earlier on that there's been an escalation, marvelous, of the number of cases reported to their offices as families continue to struggle day by day, leading to a higher incidences of disputes.
And PJ, we are actually lucky because meanwhile, as we discuss about gender-based violence, there is a big delegation from Zimbabwe, which is actually at the Africa Union, where they are discussing some of these issues, especially the issue of the girl child getting married before the legal age. So we are actually lucky that we have two of our guests who will be joining us later on, who are actually at the Africa Union in Addis Ababa to help us look at some of these issues. And this meeting is running this year under the banner Year of Women's Empowerment and Development towards Africa's Agenda 2065.
And Zimbabwe is also represented at this meeting by non-profit organizations and human rights activists and gender-based activists who will be joining us later on in the program.
Yes, PJ. Nasi muchirongwa chedu chengati kurukurei madzimai tiri kutarisa nyaya yekushungurudzwa kwemadzimai nevanasikana uko kuri kunzi iko nemasangano akadai semusasa kuri kuramba kuchienderera mberi nekukwira tichinyanyotarisa nekutambudzika kuri kuita vanhu munyika. Vamwe vari kuti izvo zvakadaro mudzimai ngaawanikwe ane chakewo chaanobata sezvatanzwa kubva kuna mai gunguo vari kuti ivo zvakamira zvakaita zvinhu munyika pari zvino zvinoda kuti mudzimai awanewo cheruviri chekuti abatsire baba kuitira kuti kana nhamo yapinda mumusha hapachawanikwa vanhu vachirovana vachitsukana vachiita zvinhu zvakawanda zvakadaro.
Kuhlelo lethu lamhlanje sikhangela indubo ezikhangelane labomama ikakhulu ukuhlukuluzana ezindlini, i-gender based violence kumbe i-domestic violence ezindlini. Sike saba lodaba esilwethulelwe marvelous nguNtambe, uMark Peter Ntambe, intatheli izindaba yethu ye-Studio 7 ese-Harare, esithi yena bakunanzelele abenhlanganiso zezakhamizi ezifana le-Chitungwiza Residents Association kanye le-CRA bethi bona basebenzelana lamapholisa bayakubona kubana izihlakalo zokuchayana ezindlini, zokubulalana kumbe i-suicide, ukuzibulala ngendaba zokuthi imali siswelakele lapha endlini, umnotho kawumanga kuhle elizweni. Yikho sokubangela ukuthi inombolo kumbe inani labantu abafayo ngenxa yokuhlukuluzana ezindlini kokuzondisana ngenxa yokuthi kusokuswelakale imali liyana lokho liqonga inani leli.
PJ, for those of you out there, our listeners who want to join us, you can phone us directly at 001-202-619-2077 and we'll call you right back. And our number again is 001-202-619-2077. And hearing from our technicians out there, I think we've got our first guest, Pastor Lucia Gunguo. Pastor Lucia Gunguo, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Maita Basa.
Aiwa, tinokuchingamidzai nemufaro pano pachirongwa chedu chengati kurukurei madzimai. Tanzwa isu mune nhaurwa dzatamboita kuti uwandu hwevanasikana nemadzimai vari kuwanikwa vachishungurudzwa huri kuwanda mudzimba nekuti mamiriro akaita zvinhu munyika haana kunyatsomira zvakanaka pari zvino. Uyezve imi ndanzwa muchimbotaurawo pane zvatambenge tataura tisati tauya pachirongwa kuti pane zvinogona kuitwa nemudzimai kuti bopoto isanyanyowanda mumusha. Zviizvo zvimaigunguwo.
Right. Chekutanga ka ndisati ndataura zvimwe zvingaitwa nomudzimai. Ndachida kuti futi tisasiya nyaya yemaWhatsApp. Nekuti kumwe kurovana nekupopotedzana kwakuita varume nemadzimai mudzimba umo zvizokonzesa kuti vanhu varovane. WhatsApp chaiyo yakauya iyi. Nekuti kare vanhu vaiti vakanga vachiita musikanzwa yavo vanga vana baba kuti aita girlfriend. Zvainonoka kuti mukadzi azvibata azvizive. Ivi ndivo vamwe vakadzi pavaitawo umwe musikanzwa yavo varume vaigona kusaziva kuti pane zviri kuitika. Asi neWhatsApp yakauya manje iyi ibongozvozvo ndo imwe futi yawedzera handi kungoshayikwa kwemari chete nekuti varipo vanotori nadzo mari dzacho asi uchimbozwa kunzi vari kurovana vari kudini vari kubayana nemapanga mari yacho yakawanda but zviya zvanga zvakavanzika zvaakubutiswa pachena nechinyi neWhatsApp.
Saka maigungo imi zvii zvamunokurudzira vari mudzimba kuti tisawanikwe pachizoita mabongozozo atiri kunzwa ari kuitika ari kuramba achikwira?
Chekutanga kana iri nyaya yebongozozo inouya nechekuita kwokuti mumba hamuna chekubata, kurudziro yangu ndeyekuti mudzimai ngaarege kugara. Mudzimai ngaarege kufunga kuti iye anozokosha nekupaita murume. Nekuti patinenge tichikura vamwe vachiri vakomana vamwe vachiri vasikana tiri kuenda kuzvikoro. Isusu muno muZimbabwe takanyanya kuropafadzwa because nyaya dzokuenda kuzvikoro makare ndo pataizwa kuti vana baba vaiti vanasikana vaende kuchikoro vachikosa kuti varume ndio vega vanodini vakomana ndio vega vanoenda. Asi iko zvino izvika izvi right yemwana wega wega yekuti aende kuchikoro, right to education. Saka you find kuti paruzebha makaona mukatarisa statistics vasikana vakawanda vakuendawo kupi kuzvikoro. Tinavo vasikana vakawanda vakusimuka vachitiwo madoctors mabasa akasiyana siyana even mamwe epamusoro zvokuti kazhinji kacho pamwe pacho iye mwana musikana akasazvikoshesa iye kuziva kuti ndofanira kudzidza ndiye akutozvideredzera pasi. Ikaini kuti vamwe vacho vana vanotenge vachienda kuzvikoro handitika mukana wokudzidza anawo school fees apuwa nevabereki uyo akuita zvevakomana ari kuchikoro kuya pazopera chikoro chiya tafoira kana usina minimum of 5 levels including maths and English kuti uchauyambuka kuenda kumberi hazvitaiti. Saka ini kurudziro yangu yekutanga ndeyekuti musikana ngaazvikoshese iye asati azopinda mumba kunonzi nomurume unokosha, because kukosha kwangu semunhu womukadzi hakutangiriwe ndaroorwa. Kunotanga inini semusikana ndichizviisa value pandiri. Sokutanga ndozvempawa nedzidzo kana mukana wacho uripo. Chechipiri even inini semusikana kuzvikoshesa mwiri wangu, because chimwe chinhu chinozoita kuti vanasikana bongozozo dzizowedzerwa futi vanhu vamudzimba ndizvozvo zvokuti musikana zvino achiroorwa ende pamwe kudzidza akadzidza kana kuti pamwe mari iripo pane zvakaitika muupenyu hwomusikana humhandara huya hwarasika paanopinda mumba muchisina trust akanonoka kubva kubasa murume anongoti wafura wanga une zvikopa hapana. There is a lot to explain because the past is not okay. Saka ndogara nchiudza vasikana kuti
maigungo tombokubatai murombo maigungo tombokubatai muromo ipapo kuti tingoti gaga kunona sisi PJ nekuti tichada kumbopinda muchirungu topinda kuti vamwe vanzwewo zvamuri kutaura.
Umfundisi lapha uPastor Lucia Gunguwo ubekhuluma ngendaba ezithile uqale wahle watsho wathi na okunye osokubangela ukuthi abantu babe lokulwa ezindlini la bagcina abanye sebelahlekelwa yimphefumulo abanye sebezibophela abanye sebezibulala okuyinto embi kakhulu. Okunye okuhluphayo kakhulu ngaphandle kwemali Marvelous uthi yena ngo WhatsApp wona laba WhatsApp o Facebook social media yiyo esibulele abantu abaningi. Wothi ngihle ngiqhubele lumbuzo komunye wethu ozazi phathisa kuhlolelo lethu lamhlanje yena ke nkosazana Cheryl Khuphe anjo Makupi. Hello Makupi.
PJ, we seem to be having
yeah.
There's a phone delay, I think.
Yeah, kunjani mama?
Ngiyaphila Lizana.
Hayi siyaphila. Umzwile umfundisi Lucia Gungu ekhuluma lapha ngendaba ngezizathu ezibangela ukuthi abantu baxabane ezindlini ikakhulu okulinani okuthwala lokho liqonga mihla la ngemihla. Wena ke ubona njani?
Bengizwisisa sibili njalo ngiyavumelana ukuthi indlela ye-economy made the way it is ingayenza ukuthi abantu bele kakhulu ezindlini, but angiboni ukuthi okuthiwa yikho okubangelayo kulezi zizathu eziningi. Njalo angeke ngithi umuntu balelaka ngoba kalamali, ngoba bakhona ababambayo abalemali ozuza zonke kodwa abangahlalisani kuhle labantu endlini. So ekugcineni kini ayisombuzo ole answer eyodwa kulampendulo eyodwa when it comes to gender violence. Kule zizathu eziningi, and I think it goes back to ukuthi umuntu yena ngokwakho kunjenjani, uyahlonipha yini umphefumulo womunye umuntu, ngoba nxa uvela ufaka isandla lomunye umuntu yakuthi kuzaphetha ngani, ngoba abanye sebedlule ngokuthaya. Asikuthi uyamthaya umuntu njalo omunye amhlukuluza emoyeni ngoba yabumfaka isandla, but those are ama-scars that people don't talk about. Sabe singavoni, but umuntu wakhona uzwa njani ubuhlungu.
Abanye ngabathethiswayo.
Bese ngisiza akutshoyo nge-WhatsApp.
Hello? Khuluma qhubeka.
Okay, then bese ngisiza lokho awutshoyo ukuthi i-WhatsApp yesibangela ukuthi abantu bale. Mina ngicabanga ukuthi like isibhamu ayisiso esibulala abantu babulala abantu, ngoba umuntu ngiyothatha isibhamu abulala omunye umuntu kunje. So into ezinjenge-WhatsApp, i-technology isilethe ingqubela phambili in so many ways, but iyadepend ukuthi umuntu yena unjani ngokwakhe, kuyini akwenza akusebenzisa i-technology yakhe. Ayeze ngithi umuntu uvunyelwe ukuthi umuntu ngokuthola i-message engayisiyo ku-WhatsApp. Amboni ukuthi kuyaphathisa ukuthi singaya phambili sisithi i-WhatsApp yenza abantu bethaka. It's other issues.
Marvelous.
Lack of communication, ukungazwisisani endlini.
Marvelous. Miss Coupe is actually saying it's not the gun that shoots the person, but it's the person who handles the gun and shoots somebody else.
I think she's basically also just articulating what Pastor Gunguo was saying earlier on, to say that it's not only about the economics.
No.
It's also about social media and other dynamics that have come up in this new age that we're living in, which are actually leading to this violence that we're seeing escalating, especially amongst, against women and young girls.
And it's not only physical abuse, but also verbal abuse, mental abuse that can contribute to all these fatalities.
Yes, and PJ, I think we will now cross over to the African Union, to where Ms. Beatrice Savage and our other guests will also be joining us and sharing with us what is being discussed at the African Union. And we're going to be talking to her via Skype. Hello, Ms. Savage.
Hello, how are you?
Well, welcome to the Women's Roundtable. Nice to see you there in Addis Ababa. Tell us, what is Zimbabwe doing, and your organization especially? What are you hoping to achieve at this meeting?
Thank you for having us on the program. What is happening now at the African Union is that there are side events that are happening prior to the summit, consultative meetings. Like for the past 2 days, we were having the Gender is My Agenda campaign pre-summit consultative meeting, where different organizations from...
Hello, Ms. Savage. I think we're having a bit of a delay there, but PJ, this is interesting because we also have on standby
Ms. Nomatamsanga Gumedi.
And I understand we now have Ms. Savage back. Welcome again.
Thank you.
You can carry on.
Okay, I was speaking to this year's theme for the summit. It's Women's Empowerment and Development towards Agenda 2063. So pre-summit consultative meetings that were happening for the past couple of days, we're bringing women from all walks of life, women from grassroots organizations, women from countries in conflict like South Sudan, from Nigeria, women from Zimbabwe, talking about issues to do with women's empowerment and development. And some of the key issues that are coming out for, say, women in agriculture, there's a popular theme that was running to say, the hoe must go, to say we need to introduce new technologies for women in farming. As we know, most of women, even in our own country, Zimbabwe, are involved in agriculture, but they are still using traditional means of farming, where you find that they invest a lot of time and effort in doing that, yet they end up producing a little, which can't even compete on international markets, whatever produce that they end up having at the end of the day. Some of the key issues coming out are issues of ending child marriage. I think across all countries that were present in the GMAC meeting, they were speaking about the need to prioritize efforts to end child marriages, and we're actually lobbying with the African Union Commission to say that there is need to scale up the African Union campaign on ending child marriages in all the countries in Africa, and that there's need to put in place interventions for children who are already child brides, and also on young girls who fall pregnant, so that marriage doesn't become the solution to the whole challenge, but that girls are kept in school even if they fall pregnant. And
Ms. Savage, just to break it up a little bit, I think we would like to move over to
Nomatamsanga Gumede.
Yes, so that we can just hear from her view, and then we'll come back to you. Jay.
Asiyakwamukela kuhlelo ngumagumede kumbe unkosikazi Gumede?
Magumede.
Kunjani mama?
Ngiyaphila.
Lina ke yini elisimeleyo khona ngapho ngase Addis Ababa. Ungathi fahla nje ngamancane ukuthi kati vele lenzani khona ngapho limeleni.
Okay, ngiyabonga ithuba elinginike lona. I-meeting yethu iqalise mhla ka-20 bekunge Tuesday. Bekubuye amazwe amanengi e-Africa. Lathi sithokoze kakhulu kangaka ukubana lathi sibe ngabameli benu abeZimbabwe. Kunengi osekuke kwakhulunywa wona lawo ama-days amafitshane sike esesikiyo lapho e-Addis Ababa. Olunye uhlupho kade lukhangelelwe ngalo ngolweze agriculture, lapho sinanzelela ikakhulu ivini laseZimbabwe kukhona lapho abantu abathi nxa besemasimini bayasebenzisa amakhuba kuphela. Lokhu bese ugcina kubangela ukubana ugcine ungasabi lempumela eningi. Ngakho bekule recommendation yokubana ngaba kanjani ukubana abantu sikwanise ukubana sidonate ama-truck ukwenzele ukubana abantu benelise ukubana bebe le produce eningi kwenza ukuthi besilele imuli. Leyinye imali benelise, leyinye imali abayitholayo benelise njalo ukubana benelise ukubana lokho asebekutholile i-maize zona le abasebeyithole benelise ukubana bethengise basilele njalo izimuli zabo.
Isivuno sangikhona sibe sikhulu.
Yes, isivuno sibe sikhulu.
Yenza kubamba kumlomo khona lapho ukuthi singenise abalaleli bethu. Asebekhona ecingweni. Kodwa ke nxa nginanzelela utsho wena ukuthi ikhuba lele elokubamba ngesandla kumele libe ngaliyamiswa abantu baqalise ukulima ngetract. Umarvelous ulabalaleli.
Aiwa, tine vateereri vedu vaviri, tina sisi Elaine vari kuZimbabwe. Makadi sisi Elaine?
Tirito makadiwe.
Aiwa, tinokuchingamidzai muchirongwa chedu chemadzimai.
Tinotenda zvikuru.
Aiwa, tipewo pfungwa dzenyu.
Ine ndinoona sekuti unyari munhu ari munhu kadzi. Angava mukuru, angava mudiki. Munyika yedu muno muZimbabwe. Ndinoona sekuti hakusisina kuremekedzana mukati medzimba. Vana vamazuva ano havacharemekedzi varume vavo. Vava kuita saivo varume. Vava kurarama sana baba nekuti vanozviratidza sekuti ndivo vavawo kushanda sevarume.
haisi WhatsApp, haisi Facebook, inogona kuti murume nemukadzi vasagara zvakanaka mumba.
Ehe, sekuona kwenyu chii?
Sokuona kwangu ini ndinoona sokuti technology haina kuvenga kuti vanhu vaparadzane. Asi yakauya kuzosimudzira kuti vanhu vazive chinogona kubatsira muupenyu. Ndinoona zvese kuti zvayakauya technology yeWhatsApp neFacebook namafoni atiri kudai kufonerana kudai. Ndinoona sokuti imba inyanye kufamba zvakanaka, zvatinoziva kuti varume vanonyenga, varume vanoita masmall house. Mukadzi ngave nefoni yake, murume nefoni yake. Ndinoona sokuti zvetinogona kuremekedzana upenyu hukatoenderera.
Asi Cecilia, inyaya iyo inoda kutozoti tinyatsozeyazve muzvikamu zvinotevera, nekuti inyaya yanetsa nyaya iyo yekuti foni yemurume ndeyake ega here, nekuti pai pamunochatiswa munonzi mava nyama imwe.
Zvino zviri kuitika ndo zviri kutoita kutoti zvitoputsa dzimba dzacho. Kana ukanobata ukasangana nezvakawanda, vechishona vanoti izvo ukapfira mugomo ukasimudza matombo, unowana zvinenge zviri pasi pedombo chinokuruma.
Kana ukanoritsvaga mugomo rinonzi gudo, unoriwana.
Unoriwana.
Aiwa, tatenda.
Ndipo ndeyekuti iwe you have to avoid that. Imba itorarama zvakanaka. Kana watoziva kuti munhu wako ndo mararamiro ake,
usaenda kugomo
kubata chiponeso chake.
Aiwa, tazvinzwa, vane nzeve vanzwa. Tine mumwe muteereri tisati tadzokera kuna Mai Gunguo nevamwe magesi edu atambomisa pari zvino. Tina vadoma, makadi yenyu vadoma? Aiwa, tinokuchingamidzai pachirongwa chedu. Endererai mberi zvenyu.
Nhau yekuti vanhu mudzimba mudagadzirane, chokutanga chimwe chandinoona ndechekuti mukadzi akawana pei akawanda kudarika murume panotinetse ipapo. Zvakare muno muZimbabwe nyaya irimo ndeyekuti dzaimbowanikwa kare nezvakuwanikwa izvinezvi zvasiyana. Izvi WhatsApp unenge watoupa mberi unenge wakuitika, nekuti nyaya inoitika ndeyekuti kana ukashaya chikafu ndo panonyanya kuti panobuda nhau ichipambira. Asi nhau iripo yekuti pakudyapo pachikafu apo munhu akashaya mpaka namambemu towanika zvaaziwanika. Zvikazosvota nechinacho munyika yedu pari zvino zvinoziva zvazaenda mudondo zvitonga yaitanga musungu.
Aiwa, tinotenda vadoma nepfungwa dzenyu. Mai Gunguo, kana mukakwanisa kungopinda mongoti mhanye nekuti tasara nenguva shoma kuti tipedze first
chete chaiyo.
Mongoti ga nechirungu nekuti tambotaura nerwamai, mongoti ga kuti what's your take nezvataurwa nevateereri vedu vafona?
Let me say I've been to different African countries, not all of them, but a number of them, especially the ones that are bordering us, like Malawi, Mozambique, South Africa, you know. And I'd want to say, people focus on the negative things. I wouldn't want to go and stay in Zambia or Mozambique or South Africa. I'm much better in Zimbabwe. It's all about working and using your brain. Because if you go to these other neighboring countries, you realize that the situation is even worse. So let's not just dwell on the negative things. You find most musicians from outside.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gunguo. I'm going to ask you to stay on the line. We'll be migrating to our internet version, but please stay on the line, Mrs. Gunguo, and our other guest at the AU. Please join us on www.voazimbabwe.com, where we'll be live streaming. Stay tuned. I'm Marvelous Mplanganyahuye.
And I'm Praxedes Jeremiah. Sizoqhubeka ngohlelo lethu kodwa khathesi sesiya ebulenjini. Kubalaleli bethu abe-radio sithi lilale. Sidibaneni ngeviki elizayo.
Welcome again to Studio 7's Women's Round Table, where we are looking at the high rate of women and child abuse in the country. But we're also looking at ways in which this can be alleviated. And we have on the line PJ, our guest, Mrs. Pastor Lucia Gunguo. We also have some guests at the AU Summit in Addis Ababa. And we have Cheryl Miskupe, who's also our guest on this program.
Noma Tamsanga Kumete and Miss Beatrice Savajge.
Yes, PJ, but this has been a very interesting debate because we've had a wide range of views coming in, especially from some of our listeners who are saying, look, I think women also need to now take their roles as wives. Not just because you are earning a high salary, you think you're at the same level as a man.
As your husband. No, the husband is the head of the house.
Yes, and
somehow.
We had just asked Pastor Gunguo to maybe delve into that as a pastor. What are the teachings when it comes to the relationship between men and women? How are those roles actually
articulated?
Okay, so I was talking about, people being negative-minded.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not even about Zimbabwe or the economy. Yes, but to some extent it contributes. But I'm saying go to our neighboring countries and see how things are. I've been to Mozambique, I've been to Malawi, I've been to South Africa. I am proud to be Zimbabwean, and I would want to be in Zimbabwe at such a time like this. I've seen people who are even struggling to make it even when they are outside there. So when you are in Zimbabwe, it's a matter of you working as a woman. You cannot just sleep and sit and do nothing and expect that life will be good. Because even if you read the Bible, Proverbs chapter 6, if you read from Proverbs chapter 6, maybe from verse 6 going onwards, the Bible doesn't even encourage those people who are just sleeping and and sitting. Even Paul says, those who do not work, they should not eat. He actually said, as we commanded you, that those who do not work should not eat. It's a matter of working. You have to do something. Some people are just waiting because they think, I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a doctor. Start small. If you can't enroll into a teaching colleges yet, sell something, buying and selling. You know what I mean? We all start from somewhere.
Pastor Gunguo, let me come in there.
Tomorrow and then you are this big person earning a lot of money. Start somewhere, at least at your level. You have to do something.
Let me come in there, Pastor Gunguo, and just say, when we look at what was said by one of our listeners who said that, some at this moment in time, women are forgetting their role in the home, which is leading to a lot of these disputes and then the high incidence of women abuse. And, so what does the church say? What does the Bible say? What are the roles of women and the roles of men?
They get a higher salary than their husbands.
What teachings are you giving?
That's where the whole confusion is. Because when we go back to the Bible, it talks about the man being the head of the family. It talks about when God created man, he put him in the garden. He said, I want you to look after this garden, dress it, look after it. He had to get experience to be responsible first before the woman was brought into his life. And when the woman was created, what did God say? We were taken from it. And what if scientifically, if you look at the ribs, what's the role of ribs on a human being? Protecting the body, isn't it? And we have people going around even church or women gathering say, akadzimitsipa, tirimitipa, atisimsoro but tirimitipa, lisu no control our room. And I tell them that's not biblical. We are the ribs. We were taken from ribs. Our job is not to control men. Our job is to protect the men. So most men, because they are not rising up to be who they are supposed to be, putting food on the table of their families. Because even if I'm working, even if I'm earning a lot of money, even if I bring the money home, I'm just supposed to add on what the man is bringing. The man cannot sleep and say, my wife should help me. You know what I'm saying? So it's not even about the woman getting a lot of money. It's about a man being responsible. Men should be responsible and look after their families. How can I get married to a man and we spend 14 years lodging? You are not even doing anything. Those whom you went to school with are already building houses and you are stuck. You are not even doing anything. So I think the challenge is to men. Let men rise up and do a part. whatever I bring, whether it's a high salary or whatever, I should come and it should supplement what the man is already doing, because now people are missing the point. That's why you see now women are more empowered than men now, because now people think a woman is the one who's supposed to. We are not the ones who are supposed to be doing all those things. I'm supposed to be looked after by a man.
On that note, Pastor Gunguo, I'll just hold you right there. We have a listener that is calling in, and then we also have some interesting views coming from Addis Ababa at the AU Summit.
Women activists, I can feel that they're itching to chip in on this subject. But before we do that, let me go to Undlovu. Siyakwamukela kuhlelo.
Ngiyabonga.
Wena la ufuna ukusiphathisa kuhlelo lethu lamhlanje.
Hala?
Ufuna ukusiphathisa kuhlelo lethu lamhlanje?
Ngibona ngani kuqhakathekile ukuthi indaba ye-gender singaze sayenza ibe indaba yabo mama kuphela, kodwa igoqele labo baba, ngoba i-gender itsho ubaba, ubulili bukababa umbe obukamama. So kuqakathekile ukuthi labo baba babe yingxenye yokhankaso lokuqakathekisa ukwenqabela ukuluzwa kumbe idlakela olukhona emakhaya. Kungabi indaba yokuthi sithi igxile kubomama kuphela, kodwa labo baba bafakwe ukwenzela ukuthi kube yibo abazasetshenziswa ukuthi beqede lolu dlakela.
Ubona ngani kulabo baba labo abahlukuluzwayo?
Bakhona abahlukuluzwayo. Ukuhlukuluzwa kumele sikukhangele ekuthini asikho kuchaywa kuphela esingathi physical violence, kodwa kungaba yi-emotional violence okunjengakhonokho ekuthiwa ngumama, ukuthi nxa ubaba esehluleka mhlawumbe ukuthi asekele ngokupheleleyo imuli yakhe, ungayisi ukuthi zi-responsible, kodwa ngendaba zomumo wezomnotho uyehluleka. Nangumama ngikhaya lapha usemtshela amagama angazwakaliyo, kasamenza ubaba ngikhaya, usemenza umuntu useless. Khonokuyana kuyamhlukuluza emotional, ebesezibona engani ungumuntu ongasela ncedo.
Hayi, sibongile kakhulu Ndlovu ngokusiphathisa kuhlelo lethu lamhlanje. Ndlovu was actually saying, Mr. Ndlovu was actually saying, this gender-based violence, we shouldn't concentrate too much on the violence directed at women only. If it's in the family, it can also be directed at the husbands.
Okay, on that note, I think we can now switch over to the Africa Union Summit, where we have Ms. Savage itching to weigh in on what Pastor Gunguo and the others were saying.
Thank you very much, PJ and Loveness. One of the key things that AU chairperson Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma spoke about today was on the need for male engagement as we do our programs for women with women.
And if I may come in there, Ms. Savage, so are you actually involving men in some of your programs? What is the relationship like for you as an organization and the other men organizations?
Just like what Mr. Ndlovu was saying.
As Roots, we do engagement, especially on the campaign that we are doing now on ending child marriages. We do men's symposium where we bring men together to talk about issues and to just talk about what Pastor Gunguo was talking about. To me personally, is the increase on gender-based violence that we are seeing is also to do with a bigger picture of how our social system has collapsed, our high unemployment levels in Zimbabwe, how our gender roles have shifted because of our economic situation. Long back, we would find women, most of them maybe not going to work. They would perform those duties like cooking, doing all the household chores and everything. But now you find that a lot of men are unemployed. Or they are just doing, those part-time jobs. And we have seen an increase in the number of women who are crossing the borders, going maybe to South Africa, China, for a month or two, they are away from home. So issues of even immorality infidelity that Pastor Gunguo was talking to. Imagine this woman is away, and sometimes maybe she may need favors and what was it? She's interacting with men when she goes for the trips. At the same time, the husband is left, say, in Zimbabwe, is all by himself for a month and stuff like that. So you find also issues of infidelity starting to come up. So to me, it's an indication of the collapse of the social and economic system in Zimbabwe and how it has impacted on gender roles and how we haven't, I think we haven't engaged men enough as the women's movement, as organizations working in Zimbabwe, because we sit as women and talk about how we can protect ourselves from being abused, how we can access the law and everything. But I haven't seen programs where people have deliberately engaged men to find out how they can deal with these gender roles that have shifted. Because imagine you were being told you're the head of the house, and all of a sudden you can't provide, you're not that breadwinner that you're supposed to be, and the woman is bringing the paycheck at home, she's the one who's doing everything. So I think it's something that a man can find challenging. So instead of finding ways of dealing with that, they end up maybe expressing it in physical abuse, just to exert or to show that they are still the men. So they are expressing their masculinity now in a wrong way to show you that I'm still the head of the house. They know because they can't do it now in terms of bringing food on the table and all the other things that were prescribed that a man should do. So
thank you, Miss Savage. Tomboenda kuna sisi Noma tisatadzoka kwamurizve kuti mutipire zvamataura izvi murimi rwamai PJ.
Ubona njani wena Makumete loluhle ukuthi nxa kuyukuthi owesifazane kumbe umama endlini nguye othola iholo eliphezulu, ubaba azibone esengasakwanisi kumbe angasenelisi ukunakekela imuli yakhe?
Mbona ngani kuyi-issue enzima kangaka. Mbona ngani kuqakathekile ukubana sithathe njalo ibhini laseBhayibhelini, sigxile laseBhayibhelini ukubana lapho kuthiwa ubaba nguye inhloko yomuzi. Ngakho kumele sinanzelele ukuba loba yesibili umama uyabe ekwanisa ukubana ethole inzuzo eningi, but ke uthi la azame ukubana submit kumama. Yikho engingakuzwisisa ngalelo daba. Then ku-AU okunye esikunanzelela njalo ade sikhuluma ngakho lokhu ade kukhuluma lapha usisi uBeatrice ukubana kumele si-involve labo baba lawo nyawuthenga umbono nalowo awukhulumayo, ngoba kwesinye isikhathi thina singakwanisa ukubana siyenze thina ama-programs ethu sihlele ukubana senze kanjani, kodwa kuqakathekile ukubana labo siba-involve bebekwazi ukubana labo kule inye indawo lapho abanjani abaphambanisa khona ukubana even ngithathekiswe njalo umunye umbono wesinye ispeaker ade sikhuluma ukubana kwesinye isikhathi abanye omama obaba ayisikuthi yibo bodwa aba-abusayo abantu, but labo mama labo bakwanisa ukuthi be-abuse labo baba even emotional. So ngakho kuqakathekile ukubana labesilisa labo sikwanisa ukuthi siba-incorporate khonapho ku-organization nale kwenza ukuthi lapho nxa sidiscussa labo bebekwazi bebona ukubana labo bangayenza njani. Okunye omunye umuntu angabe iyenze inye into but uyabe engananzeleli ukubana into ayenzayo yabe ingaqondanga.
Anza ubamba kumlomo khona lapho ngoba sesilomlaleli, abalaleli bethu vele siyabaqhakathekisa ukwedlula lina. Athi ukuthi thina singakayi kumakhuphe ungathatha umlaleli Marvelous.
Regatinzwe kuna kubva kuna mkoma Jonathan. Makadi yenyu mkoma Jonathan?
Nofara makadi.
Aiwa tinofara. Muri kufona muri kupi?
Ndiri Nyanga.
Kwakadi kunyanga uko?
Kunyanga kuri nani zvako.
Kuri kunaya here?
Ingoti pano neapo but zviri nani hazvo.
Aiwa tipewo pfungwa dzenyu, mainzwa iri mudariro iyi.
Ndinoona sekuti muZimbabwe zvinhu zvacho kungoti zvinotinesei, but ndinoona sokudai kuti makambani anga ativhurwei ndokuti upfumi hwedu hunge huchiti wandudzikei zvakati nakei. But ndinoona nenyaya yekuti mari isiri kukwanira kuti vashandi havasi kunyatsotambirisa mari dzavo, plus zvinhu zvacho zvinenge zvichatinetsei hazvo, but ndoimba ndokufamba kwenguva pamwe zvinenge zvaita zviri nani.
ko mama vari kupi kana kuti mudzimai ari kupi achida kumbonzwawo kubva kwavari kuti kwenyanga ukakamira sei uko?
Vatorara haini kwandiri kwacho nditori ndega zvangu.
Aiwa, pakanaka mukoma. Munozoti kana svondo rinouya ngavambotifonerawo tichimbonzwawo kuti kwakamira sei kwenyanga uko.
Alright, zvakanaka.
Aiwa, tinokutendai.
Sibuyeleke kuwe Makhupe, ngilethemba lokukhona la. Ukhona na Makhupe? Ye. Hanchu ulalele lawe imbono yabantu bonke laba abakhulumayo. Omunye abanye njalo ngabathi akusela kuhloniphana ezindlini la. Nxa umama ethola iholo eliphezulu akasahloniphi umkakhe, usemtshela amagama. Njalo abanye besithi asibo bodwa abesifazana abahlukuluzwayo kodwa labesilisa. Wena ubona njani?
Ngiyavumelana labo, sibili abathi asibo bodwa omama abahlukuluzwayo, labo baba bayahlukuluzwa. But isikhathi esiningi ngathola ukuthi obaba kabareport as much as women because of the way ababonakala ngayo in society ukuthi ubaba afuzanga afake isandla ngumama. So ebeseyela ukukhuluma esesaba ukuthi uzaba lihlazo lapha akhona. So ayibaqinisile obaba labo bayahlukuluzwa, and ngasikhuluma nge-gender violence kufuze labo sikhulume ngabo ngoba bakhona sibili abasebuhlungu bakhona. Then ngiyazisisa laba bathi omama sebelenza uzo eningi, maybe because upsetha social equilibrium in the family home. Upsetha obaba, but ngendlela engibona ngayo into le ayisonitshintshe. Economy, the way esizuza ngayo imali has shifted, and ezikolo kathesi siyathola ukuthi kulama programs engeke 11 points abafana 10 points amankazana ukuthi angene in this program. That means that more and more women are getting opportunities. It is ngokuya kwesikhathi. So akuseke kuphela ukuthi omama bazathola inzuzo eningi. At the same time, ngaku ukuthi uthola inzuzo eningi ukuthi uyazitshintsha yini endlini, ubaba nguye vele ohlena azizwe semncane. So it also goes back to i-esteem kababa ukuthi yena i-esteem yakho kuba nguye kwakhe endlini. Does he only equate it to imali ayiletha endlini? Because inhlonipho akufuzanga ibe only about money. So then I think once khuluma ngakhonokho, then it becomes now a background issue ukuthi abantu bathi vele bona bakhuliswa njani endlini. Ungavele ube le mali futhi uzitshingisa kumbe imali uyabule mali, but lokhu lobuntu bakho, lokhu ngumuntu, lokhu ukwanisa ukurelate labantu at the level that they are at.
So Marvelous,
I just think that's not going to change. So
yeah. Ungaqhubeka ngesingisi uMarvelous la azizwele ukuthi she's saying it's not all about the income that's brought into the house by the woman, but it's also to do with confidence, the esteem of the husband, and you can go ahead, Makhupe, in English now.
Okay, I was explaining, I was saying good in a home you can only earn respect based on the paycheck that you bring home. Are we saying just because a woman is now earning more money that should upset the husband? Because the way I understand it is and view it is with it's a partnership in the home. Ubaba is the head of the home. Imali ngazibuye umama belethi, even if she brings more money, she still defers to him. But she can only defer to him based on the communication, the respect, and the way that they've always done things in the home. So it shouldn't really be an issue of money, because money should not equate to the respect that someone gets in a home. Then I think that goes back to background to say, how do we raise our children? How do we raise our girl children? How do we raise our male children at home?
Thank you very much, Ms. Kupe. Very interesting look at the situation right now. But I think we'll go back to the African Union, where we had promised Beatrice Savage that we'll get her take in Shona, to just hear what the African Union is saying, especially on the issue of early child marriages and the high rate of child abuse in the country. Ms. Savage.
tinotenda kuno ku-AU Summit nhasi paadreswa na-AU Chairperson Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma vataura pamusoro pekuti the AU is committed kuti ipedze nyaya dzekurodzwa kwevana vachiri vadiki muAfrica. Vakataurawo pamusoro pekuti kuti development yatinoda kuti iitike pamadzimai kuti ikurumidze kunge tichishanda towards agenda 2063 zvinoda kuti tibatirane pamwe chete nevarume vane shungu dzekunzwa kuti tingabatsirane sei kuti tipedze mhirishonga dzinoitika kumadzimai nevanofarira zvebudiriro dzemadzimai. Saka pachirungu yatingati male engagement. Saka izvozvo ndo zvimwe zvizhinji zvavanga vachitaura. Vakataurawo pamusoro pekuti tinoda kuti tipedze yatinoti pachirungu impunity, kuti sometimes unoona abuse iri kuitika nevanhu vari in positions of authority and hapana chinoitikwa kwavari, zvinhu zvinongoramba zvakadaro, ivo vanenge vachimbunyikidza vana.
Saka ndombopindira ipapo ndobvunza kuti takatarira mamiriro akaita zvinhu munyika, zvingakwanisike here kuti madzokera kumusha munowanikwa muchinoita zvamuri kudzidza ikoko?
Zvinokwanisika zvikuru nokuti mumeeting yanhasi manga mune mamuchipiwa feedback yema-ministers meeting yakaitwa nezuro. Saka Zimbabwe yanga yakamiririrwawo neMinistry of Women's Affairs yedu yakapinda meeting iyo yakaitwa nezuro. Saka vanga varimo vakapo commitment yavo yekuti vanopedza zvinhu zvakaita sechild marriage nemhirishonga dzemudzimba idzodzi. Saka zvinhu zvekuti titori kuno maorganizations ariko neministry yedu tatombowana nguva yekukurukura pamusoro pazvo kuti ndezvipi ndapi matanho atinokwanisa kutora kuti tinogadzirisa mamiriro ezvinhu kuZimbabwe maererano nenyaya dzedomestic violence, nyaya dzechild marriage and girls empowerment.
Pane zvamakurukura ndaapiwa yamatanho achange achitorwa nenyika seZimbabwe? Makabatana imi vemasangano akazvimirira nehurumende tisati tapedza here chirongwa?
Danho rimwe ratabvumirana pamusoro paro nderekuti tinolauncha a national campaign, kuti ministry yedu yewomen's affairs chanolauncha a national campaign on ending child marriages in Zimbabwe. Saka zvinhu zvekuti taona kuti zviri practical and tinokwanisa kunge tichizviita sezvo iyo ministry nemaorganizations ari kushanda pamusoro pekuti tipedze dambudziko rekurodzwa kwevanasikana vachiri vadiki. Pane matanho akanga atomboitwa kuZimbabwe. Saka ministry change ichilauncha iyoyo program. Also kwane young women's empowerment framework yakaitwa neministry ichange ichibatsira vanasikana vechidiki kuti vange vachiita budiriro yatingati zveentrepreneurship, zvekubata kwemaoko, kuti tiavhete mamwe machallenges sezvambotaura maigunguwo vachitaura kuti mwana musikana anoda kuti awane chakewo chaanomira nacho cheuviri chekuti chide changu ingave dzidzo zvinoita kuti awane mabasa kuitira tideredze futi dambudziko redomestic violence.
Totenda Sisi Beatrice asirambai makabata PJ. She's just articulating some of the commitments that have been made by non-profit organizations and the government of Zimbabwe,
which is represented at the summit as well.
But I had a question for you, Ms. Savage, before we move forward. Who is representing the women's affairs? Because we don't have a current minister. Who's there?
We have from the gender director, we have Ms. Caroline Matija, and we also have Cleopatra Ndlovu from the Ministry of Women's Affairs.
Okay.
And also we have the AU Goodwill Ambassador on Ending Child Marriages, Nyaradzayi Kumbonjanda. She's also part of this process and also representing the World YWCA. So tine delegation yabva kuZimbabwe yakasimba yekuti zvese zvatabvumirana kuno kana zvimwe zvatadzidzawo from dzimwe nyika zvinhu zvekuti we can go back and implement in our country.
Aiwa, tinotenda. Saka ndichasira Miss PJ vambotaura nasister
Makumete. Makumete, ungati fahla ngamancane utsho kubana emhlanganweni lapha lonkosikazi unkosazana Dlamini-Zuma ukuthi yena-ke ukhulumeni njalo ukusebenzelana kwenu phakathi kwenhlanganiso ezizimeleyo eZimbabwe lohulumende, njalo uhulumende umelwe na kule imihlangano?
Okay, ngiyabonga ithuba engiliphayo. Kunengi esikufundileyo about child marriage. Lapho kukhulunywa kuntathekise kakhulu kangaka even laseZimbabwe inanzelela ukubana kule percentage enkulu kangaka abantu abafakwa emishadweni besesebancane. Abanye okunye kwenziwayo ukuthi umntwana, for example, umntwana angaba enxa le 14 years kumbe ele 15 years, lapho nxa angazithwala abantwana omama, in fact abazali bayabona kulihlazo kangaka ukubana umntwana engathathi, njalo umntwana kungenzeka ukubana ade kuyimistake nje, bengayisikho ukuthi umuntu befuna ukuchada lo muntu wakhona yena lo, kodwa abantwana abangamankazana bagcina sebefoswa ukubana begcine siyachada lapho emchadweni lapho abangafuni khona. Okunye njalo, okunye akukhulumileyo uMrs Zuma namhla emhlanganweni ube sikhuthaza kangaka njalo esithi uzimisele kangaka ukubana esiphathise ukubana kuphele khona lokho okwe child marriage, njalo sibusise kangaka lapha de simelwe Miss Caroline oyeZimbabwe, njalo simelwe njalo le YWCA le njalo ade isiphathisa lapho in bringing about yona le issue ye child marriage. Sinanzelela njalo abanye abantwana ukubana lapho nxa sebehambile baya emithadweni yabo kuyagcina ku-affecta njalo le education yabo. Asesinanzelele kakhulu ukubana abaningi nxa sebengahamba emthadweni bengabantwana abancane bagcina bengasaqhubekeli phambili ngemfundo yabo, kugcine sokuba affecta even lasempilweni yabo, begcine sokumele beyenze amanye ama-duties okubana ukuba ngumalukazana, kanti bona kuyawume ukuthi ngabantwana besikolo.
Ngikubambe khona lapho ukuthi vele imihlangano enje iyaphathisa na nxa seliphendukile ngasekhaya ukubana lisebenze ndawonye liqhubekise iziqondiso zona lezo eliyabe lizivumelene emhlanganweni enje?
Okay, siyananzelela ukubana inyanga le edlulileyo bekukhulunywa izinto eziningi, kufakwa ama-proposal but angayenziwa, but this year besithembisile kangaka ukubana sizabuya njalo sizoku-implementa even lase-countryni yethu, senelise njalo ukubana sithuthukise abantwana beZimbabwe, njalo senelise ukubana siyenze ama-programs la azayenza ukubana begcine kwenze ukuthi befundiswe abantwana. Okunye baye bengakwazi, ngakho kuqakathekile ukubana senze ama-programs azayenelisa ukubana sibatshele njalo sibahlalise njalo labazali babo, labazali nje indawo yonke, ukuze kuphele yona leyi problem esikhona eAfrica child marriage.
Hayi, kulungile mama Magumede. Singaya kumfundisi Gungu njengoba isikhathi sesidliwe ngumango imavela.
Pastor Gungu, we're just asking you now to wrap up. We've just heard from our representatives there at Zimbabwe at the Africa Union, and they actually articulated some of the issues that you pointed out. But could you just wrap up the program as we come to an end?
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to say, let's all do our part. Kana uchiviritskana is just still young. Do what you are supposed to do, which is going to school, educating yourself. Later kana wazororwa, zvinenge zviri parinani. And also, to men I would want to say, we cannot just sleep there and say, I'm the man, I'm the husband, when you're doing nothing. Murukadzi will appreciate even the small things that you bring at home. Even ukawana kamari kashoma kuti zvinhu zvakaoma, but wauya nechiwo haungangorare kuti hakuna mabasa. And I would also want to challenge men to say, if you are waiting to be employed by someone, zvinogona kukutorera makore. Employ yourself. Iwewe shanda, haikona kumira kuti ndichaemploywa nomumwe munhu.
Aiwa, thank you so much, Pastor Lucia Gunguo. But time is not on our side. Would also like to thank our other guest, from the AU Summit. Would like to thank also Cheryl Kupe, who is in Zimbabwe, and our valued listeners who contributed to our program tonight, PJ. Until we meet again next week, thank you very much for being our guest on the Women's Round Table. I'm Marvelous Mhlanganya Huye.
Mina Praxedes Jeremiah, asidivaneni njalo ngeviki elizayo. Siyalibonga lonke, lilali.